Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be with you here at the 2025 Berlinale. Maybe we could just kick off with a brief introduction to 1001 Frames. For people who don't know anything about it, what can they expect going in?
Sure. So my name is Mehrnoush Aliaghaei. I'm the writer-director of 1001 Frames. It's a very minimal film that takes place entirely in an audition room. All I usually try to share, not to spoil the film, is that the actresses who are auditioning for the role of Shahrazad in 1001 Nights realize slowly that the director has something more in mind than just auditioning for the title character.
The MeToo movement has really put kind of in people's consciousness the abuse that can happen in the creative industries. And it feels like this is kind of a microcosm or throwing a spotlight on one particular part of that. But even though it's set in this sort of very confined space, it's gathering so many issues that are much broader beyond that room where the auditions are happening. What gave the idea to have this setting and this setup for the film?
So for the setup, I think I've been very much influenced by the Iranian cinema. In Iranian cinema, we have learned from the people who came, the big filmmakers like Kiarostami and Makhmalbaf Panahi. We've learned that they can tell stories with very minimal, means that are in their disposal. So I think I've been very much aware of that throughout my filmmaking career. And as a filmmaker, like a student in New York, that I was very much struggling with paying for everything. And that background kind of helped me when I was doing the short film version of this film. And I was able to use the studio that the university had, the equipment they had to tell that story. And the short became pretty powerful. People really liked it. It really moved people. And I've always wanted to do the feature version of it. But then when MeToo happened, and then also when Women Life Freedom happened, I realized this really needs revisiting. And because it was such a minimal setup and we could do it with a few actors and in a studio, it was very much possible to also do it inside Iran without any trouble. So yeah, that's when I decided to revisit the story.
Yeah, or how using kind of this stripped back setting as a device to discuss and prompt conversations about these much broader issues.
Yes, absolutely. So one thing that from the very beginning was very important for me is to tell the whole story through the audition camera point of view. And the audition camera point of view for me was what represents what I've been very much scared of all my life, and that's the gaze, the male gaze, kind of. That I grew up like walking down the street. Some men in the Middle East, especially, but everywhere, they just allow themselves to kind of watch you and kind of look you up and down, right? And I always found that very, very scary, So that's something that I thought could be a very interesting way of telling a story that is all through that point of view and put the audience in that very uncomfortable position of feeling what the person who's being watched feels. So that was the reason I kind of decided to tell the whole story in that form.
And it's quite clever the way you've used the camera in that way, because it's not specifically you feel like it's zooming in or they're not showing skin, but it feels, like you say, like it's really sort of intrusive. And I think it also puts the audience in an interesting position, because it's, are we observing what the director's doing, or are we the gaze?
Exactly.
You almost become complicit. So you're in this quite odd position when you're watching the film. So how did you kind of achieve that with the way you shot it?
So we had that conversation early on with the DP to be this director. He and the actor worked very closely to kind of decide how to move around and to kind of be kind of creepy in their way of intrusiveness of the women's, the women are just in front of the camera, but we use a zoom lens so they could just zoom in whenever they wanted. And also we put the camera on a tripod with wheels, so they just took liberty in this just maneuvering around the actresses and kind of surprising them with just getting very close to them, and the feeling, that proximity that makes you very uncomfortable, So that was one discussion that we had very early on.
Maybe about the fact that it makes the audience potentially feel complicit in the way that they're looking at the...
That was something that it was very important for us to, because when you're, as the audience, put in that place and you're feeling that you're watching something you're almost not supposed to watch, but we do that all the time, I think, in film industry, or when we're watching things that we're not supposed to, be watching, and to see that through the framing of these women, how they're feeling uncomfortable, when you're in that position and you realize this very small mimics that the woman makes, or they're moving a little bit back, or just shifting their body, and it totally shows the discomfort. And I thought, just to have the audience in that position, it gives us that perspective and kind of the complicity that they have in being a part of it. And also in the film industry, as every time that we're watching any of those films, or pornography, or, all of that, we are in a way complicit in that aspect. So I hope that the film has been able to reach some of those.
Just by consuming the content that's made on that basis.
Absolutely, yeah.
What I really love is you've got these quite distinct characters, but there is this kind of slippage between fiction and reality. And sometimes when you're watching it, we're not quite sure, when it's verged into, is the actress still playing a role, or is she actually fearful? And I don't know if it's a spoiler, the twist that kind of comes towards the end, it, can feel like genuine fear. So how did you kind of work with the actresses to, I guess, devise each of these individual characters, but also to give this feeling of, is this real? Is this acted?
Absolutely. So a few things we decided was, I wanted to work with variety of actors, in terms of some very, very professional actresses. And then also some that are, because the director, who's also the producer of the film, he's an acting instructor. So he has been teaching a lot of actors in Iran, and I knew a bunch of them through him. So I basically wrote some of the scripts for some of the actresses specifically. So I wanted the very certain people to perform those specific parts. But also we decided that we wanted to do everything, and that was an experience I had from the short, that it works really well when you do the whole scene from the moment they enter the room through the ending. So they knew that once they enter, we won't cut until they exit. So that is something that has helped the performance, and to give it that I had told them that it's fine if you forgot a line, or you just come up with your own line. None of the lines are that. It's not the Holy Bible or anything. So feel free, if you want to just change a line to make it feel your own. They had completely that power to do that. And also one other thing that we did is we did a few improvised scenes. So with actresses who knew what was going to happen in the room, but they didn't have any lines. So some of those we were going to do as just an experiment. We wanted to see, okay, so if you are in this room with this director and he's going to do this, it's kind of a MeToo kind of a situation. And let's see how you would like to react, So with a few actresses, we tried that, and it turned out really interesting, because I was going to do it first as just to see how it goes, maybe rewrite it and rework it with them. But it was so good. They were just so good, because and one part of it was that they had full trust in Mohammed, the director behind the camera, because they knew him for many years. They had trained with him, and he also knew their range as an actor, and what he could explore with each one. So that also helped a lot to have that, the fiction and the reality kind of collide. And about the ending with the door, we did something. So that was something I knew that if the actors know ahead of time, it might impact their performance. But at the same time, it was very important for me not to put any actors in an uncomfortable situation. So I talked to everyone before we shot, when they had the script and everything. But then at the end, I said, there is a surprise element that might help you if you don't know what it is. But if you want to know it, I'll tell you, And except for one person, everybody wanted to not know. They were like, we know you guys, we trust you. They're all friends. So they're like, yeah, don't tell me. But I said to them, okay, if you at any point felt uncomfortable, just say stop. I don't want to, and nobody said stop, So we went through the door scene with them knowing that there is a surprise, but not knowing what it is. So that was something that that I think helped a lot. But that was something that I was also very worried that, is it going to like put them in an uncomfortable situation? So I asked a lot of related questions. They asked them, are you claustrophobic? Have you ever been in a situation like that? And and the actress who actually wanted to know, she didn't actually ask to know. She just told me that she has a bit of a similar situation. So I was like, look, you need to know that there's this scene that is going to happen. Actually, she gave one of the best performances, even though she knew she actually, did pretty well. And
if you're sort of going to take that to another level, it's kind of a metaphorical it's a physical manifestation of something metaphorical, of that sudden moment that probably a lot of women have had, of where you think you're sort of feeling a bit wary and suddenly something shifts and you're actually afraid. And that can sort of, show up in many different situations, not just in, when you're auditioning for something. So is that also something that could be taken away from that, that can have a deeper meaning too?
Absolutely. I was thinking that we as women, and I am, as an example, I talk from experience, whenever I'm in situations that I feel like, oh, there's something wrong, but then I'm like, no, this person is nice. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't say that. And then I just let them go. Like, I realized that you just don't say anything, or I uncomfortably smile usually in those situations. And then I realized the more it goes, the man or the person in front of me gets more, aggressive. And then you find yourself back against the wall, almost like that door scene. I think that's what it represents for me, that like you just don't say anything until you actually find, so maybe the earlier you react, you might actually get out of the situation a lot faster or easier. But like the more you like let the person be, just because you're polite or you're just unsure, or you don't want to offend the person, and you just let it. And then I think that helps, that aggression, and like intensifies what comes next.
I think also this, where he's saying that they have to sort of say a traumatic or even erotic story, in order to get out. I think that kind of prods at this idea where not necessarily sharing your story can always be empowering when it's not something that you've done with your own agency. So was that something else you wanted to explore through that kind of moment?
Exactly. I mean, like that, I think for in 1001 Nights, we have the story of Shahrazad, and she, of course, we know her as a heroine, and she has gone to change the king, and through storytelling, she stops him from killing women. But that at the same time, there's that question, like, because at the end of the day, she marries him, has kids with him, they live happily ever after. And that was the part of that story that I thought relevant to what you were just talking about, that when is that performance and when is just giving in and like kind of accepting that role is going to kind of empower the other party, and like, when actual fight is going to begin.
Obviously, right at the end, you kind of break the fourth wall. But I think after the build-up of tension and the intensity throughout the film, there's sort of this moment of catharsis. And I think, was that intentional to kind of leave the audience not on that moment of negativity and tension, but actually move to something that's more positive and hopeful, and, even by women perhaps feeling seen, being able to have camaraderie, by being able to connect and understand, each other's past traumas, can actually be something positive.
Absolutely. The ending for me is about that collective experience. It's about us coming together, our whole film team, and women taking on this very hard role. They were all like very shaken after the scene, and so were the crew, like the cameraman, the soundman, and the actor. They were all like, every time they were just like shaken, and you could see how that has impacted them. And I just decided that I don't want to leave the audience, because we had other endings in mind at the beginning, but then I just didn't realize that I don't want to end on that note, to have it, to make it seem like we're just creating what we already maybe have heard, but we're just like showing it more. But then for me, it was an act that what everybody has come together to do is a part of helping this conversation grow, and kind of as a reminder of what we experience, and to show that this group has come together to make a change and to make a difference.
And what does it mean to you to have the film playing at the Berlinale? Because it does feel like it's one of these festivals where cinema is, always, the boundaries are being pushed, questioning gaze, lots of the things that are really relevant to your film. And of course, I guess the context that you probably won't be able to show it in Iran, if I'm correct. So the fact that it's got an audience here must mean even more to you.
Absolutely. I think we were very surprised to have Berlinale take on this project. We submitted it as a work in progress. So we ended up like working really hard in the past month to finish it in time. To have this amazing opportunity to share it with such a big audience, first of all, and also to have the industry be here to know about this film. And it's also a stamp of approval in a way, that helps kind of get the movie seen by hopefully more people, and like maybe other festivals, and that has been such a rewarding experience, because it was such a small film. Like we only did it with a few people, with no money, almost. So to just have that, it's we are just beyond grateful from Berlinale to take our film and let us have this opportunity to present it here with such a big audience.
And do you feel positivity for the future, whether that's for the status of women, treatment in Iran, in the film industry? Do you feel like there's progress being made in some quarters, but I guess maybe not in others?
I really think we are at the beginning of, we have just started talking about the problem. What MeToo and sharing of the stories did, I think, was beautiful, and it started a conversation, but it hasn't really made it change. Like what I think we need is laws to change, to have serious punishment to people, and to also empower women to, because I've had friends since this, that in the US, one of my friends, she actually legally pursued, but she said afterwards it was so draining for her that she was like, if I had known, I wouldn't have done it. But I think that's why I think we need to really go deeper and make possibilities for people to be able to be outspoken without consequences, without worrying that they're going to lose their jobs or careers. And that is a long way, just talking, yes, that's a beginning, but to change. And I'm optimistic. I think it all starts from the storytelling and from knowing that, but then the actions that come after, I think that's where we need to really work on. And we are, I think, still far from that.
And do you know what you're going to work on next? Have you got another project?
I do have a few, because from the short to this one, I have been writing. So I have a few feature films that I've written, and but always the money has always been the biggest problem, and that's I think was the fortunate thing about this film, was that I didn't need much money, and we were able to do it with support of friends and with the small grants, and so that has been really helpful to be able to show that we could do a feature film as a team. So I'm hoping that after this we can get more funding for the other projects and get them off the ground.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I hope so too. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. Huge congrats on the film, and really enjoyed presenting it here in Berlin.
Thank you very much for this.